The disappearance of Summer Wells has remained one of Tennessee's most closely followed missing child investigations. More than 4 years have passed since the first alert was issued, and yet the case continues to evolve with new developments that draw national attention. Each official update, no matter how small, reminds the public that this investigation has never been closed. The search for verified information continues, and every confirmed step adds another layer to the long timeline that still raises many unresolved questions. Recently, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation confirmed that agents were back in the field, following up on a new lead near Van Hill Road in Greenville. The location sits less than 10 miles from the Wells family home and immediately renewed public interest. While officials did not share details about the tip or whether anything was found, the confirmation of on-site investigative activity marked one of the most significant updates in years, especially given the long periods of limited public information. Following this search, Summer's parents released a brief statement saying they would not be giving interviews or responding to media requests. They expressed that without verified updates from investigators, additional conversations could lead to unnecessary confusion or emotional strain. Their message reinforced the importance of relying on confirmed information, especially as the case enters another year without definitive answers and as renewed attention places the family back into the public spotlight. In today's video, we examine what has been confirmed, what led investigators to revisit the Van Hill Road area, and why the family chose to remain silent after the latest search. This breakdown focuses solely on verified details from official sources and news reports, offering a clear and factual look at how the case reached this point. As the investigation continues, each new development helps shape the story of one of Tennessee's most enduring missing child cases. On June 15, 2021, the disappearance of 5-year-old Summer Wells sparked one of the largest search efforts ever recorded in Hawkins County, Tennessee. What began as a routine summer afternoon at the Wells family home quickly shifted into a critical situation once her family realized she was no longer inside the house. The urgency of the moment prompted immediate calls to local authorities, setting into motion an extensive response. Early reports indicated that Summer had been spending time outdoors with her mother and grandmother before returning inside to play. When she did not respond to repeated calls, her family searched the home and surrounding area. As minutes passed without progress, the concern grew. The initial details were limited, but they were enough to alert investigators that time was a crucial factor in the developing situation. Local law enforcement responded quickly, arriving at the property on Ben Hill Road to begin the first phase of the search. Officers surveyed the home, nearby buildings, and accessible paths. They gathered basic information about the timeline, direction of movement, and last confirmed observations. These first steps would later form the foundation of the broader investigation that unfolded in the days to follow. Within hours, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an endangered child alert, signaling the seriousness of the situation. The alert helped notify surrounding communities and mobilize additional resources. Search teams began arriving with specialized tools and training, prepared to cover difficult terrain. The transition from local response to multi-agency coordination marked a significant escalation in the effort to locate Summer. As daylight faded, crews continued their search using flashlights, vehicles, and thermal equipment. The dense woods around the property created natural obstacles, making visibility and mobility challenging. Even so, search teams pushed forward with determination. The urgency of the situation drove efforts late into the night, reflecting the commitment to locating her as quickly as possible. By the next morning, the scale of the operation expanded dramatically. More agencies joined, including federal partners and volunteer rescue organizations. The area surrounding the Wells home was systematically divided into sections to ensure coverage of every reachable location. Mapping teams worked closely with search coordinators to guide crews through steep and heavily wooded areas. Search dogs were deployed early in the operation, assisting teams as they navigated the rugged landscape. Handlers guided the dogs through forests, ravines, and pathways. While environmental factors can affect scent patterns, these tools were still essential for covering large areas quickly. Their use added another layer of precision to the expanding search grid. Helicopters and drones contributed aerial support, scanning fields and tree lines from above. These perspectives were essential in terrain where ground visibility was limited. Crews used infrared technology to identify heat signatures that could indicate movement or presence. Every tool available was brought into the effort, reflecting the seriousness of the investigation. Despite the extensive search, no confirmed signs of summer were found in the initial hours. The lack of immediate evidence introduced uncertainty into the investigation and broadened the scope of possibilities. Investigators began preparing for additional scenarios beyond the immediate area, recognizing that the situation might require long-term review. As news of the disappearance spread, community members gathered to offer support. Volunteers checked properties, outbuildings, and trails. While their contributions were valuable, authorities emphasized the importance of organization and safety, encouraging the public to coordinate through official command posts to avoid disrupting professional search patterns. The TBI soon upgraded the alert to an Amber Alert, expanding awareness statewide. This step is taken only under specific conditions, indicating that investigators believed the situation required urgent public attention. The alert included details such as height, weight, clothing, and distinguishing features to aid recognition. Reports and statements from investigators remained cautious, focusing strictly on verified information. Authorities emphasized that no single scenario had been confirmed and that they were exploring all possibilities. This commitment to accuracy shaped how the investigation would be communicated in the months and years ahead. Search teams continued covering ground systematically. Even as crews worked tirelessly, the terrain posed ongoing difficulties. The combination of hills, thick underbrush, and shifting weather created challenges that required careful planning. Despite these obstacles, the operation persisted across multiple days. Investigators broadened their search radius to include roads, waterways, and remote structures. They conducted interviews, gathered routine information, and assessed timelines. While these steps did not immediately produce answers, they were essential components of developing a clear investigative picture. Local residents also cooperated with authorities, providing access to private land and sharing any observations from the day of the disappearance. This collaboration helped expand coverage and ensured that difficult-to-reach areas were examined. Community involvement played an important role in the early stages of the investigation. As days passed, search efforts transitioned from broad sweep operations to more targeted reviews based on gathered data. Each lead required evaluation, and each location had to be cleared systematically. This shift marked the beginning of the long-term investigative phase that would continue over the following years. During early press conferences, investigators reiterated that they were leaving no possibility unexamined. They stressed that without confirmed evidence, conclusions could not be drawn. This message remained consistent throughout the case, shaping public expectations and emphasizing the importance of factual information. The combination of scale, urgency, and uncertainty made the case stand out nationally. Coverage expanded beyond Tennessee as major outlets began reporting on the developing search. The intense interest reflected both concern for summer and recognition of the challenges investigators faced. Even with the significant search efforts, the lack of confirmed findings meant the investigation would extend far beyond the first few days. The case entered a new phase 1 requiring long-term analysis, follow-up, and steady review. This transition set the foundation for the years of investigative work that followed. The beginning of the search for Summer Wells established the scope and seriousness of the case. From the first alert to the coordinated multi-agency effort, every step demonstrated a commitment to finding answers. This foundation continues to influence the investigation today, as new leads and developments emerge years later. As the search for Summer Wells entered its second and third days, investigators recognized the need to broaden their efforts well beyond the immediate property. The rugged terrain surrounding the Wells residence made it difficult to rely solely on ground crews. Coordinated teams began extending their grid patterns, ensuring that any area within reach was examined carefully and methodically. Search leaders met multiple times each day to update strategies and reassign personnel based on new information. Maps were marked, revised, and distributed to keep all teams aligned. This constant restructuring ensured that sections already covered could be reviewed again if necessary, preventing any gaps or oversights in the overall plan. Aerial units became increasingly valuable as the search expanded. Helicopters circled overhead, providing thermal scans and visual sweeps across slopes and dense tree lines. Drones equipped with high-resolution cameras supported these efforts, allowing investigators to cover locations too dangerous or inaccessible for ground teams. Local agencies continued to receive assistance from surrounding jurisdictions. Officers, firefighters, rescue specialists, and trained volunteers traveled from nearby counties to help. Their combined expertise brought new perspectives to the effort, strengthening the operation's overall efficiency and thoroughness. Water sources in the region were also reviewed. Crews examined ponds, streams, and drainage areas near the property, using specialized tools to ensure that every location was carefully evaluated. These searches required precision and patience, as water can complicate visibility and movement. Investigators conducted routine interviews with individuals who were near the area on the day Summer disappeared. These conversations helped them reconstruct a timeline and identify any unusual activity reported by residents. While none of the early interviews produced definitive answers, they provided essential context for the ongoing investigation. Road checkpoints were established around Ben Hill Road and surrounding routes. Officers stopped vehicles, shared information about the missing child alert, and asked drivers if they had seen anything out of the ordinary. These roadblocks ensured that individuals passing through the area were aware of the situation and might report helpful details. Specialized scent units returned to the area multiple times as the search expanded. Handlers explained that factors such as temperature, humidity, and terrain can influence a dog's ability to track. Because of these variables, repeat passes were important to confirm earlier results and ensure thorough coverage. Search leaders faced increasing difficulty due to the steep slopes and dense vegetation that surrounded much of the well's property. Some areas required rope teams and technical equipment just to access safely. These conditions added time to the operation but demonstrated the level of commitment invested in the search. As more ground was covered, investigators revisited key areas to verify earlier work. Rechecking spaces is common in large-scale searches because environmental changes or shifting vantage points can reveal details previously overlooked. This process also helped eliminate possibilities as investigators narrowed their focus. Members of the community continued to support the effort by donating food, equipment, and supplies. Volunteers helped distribute water and offered assistance to teams on long shifts. Their involvement demonstrated how deeply the disappearance affected the region and reinforced the collective desire to find answers. Authorities also monitored tips submitted from both local residents and individuals outside the state. Many tips described potential sightings or provided general information, which investigators reviewed for relevance. Although none produced confirmed findings, every submission was documented and considered. Media coverage grew steadily during this period. News outlets provided regular updates on the search, reminding the public of Summer's physical description and shared photos released by the TBI. Reporters emphasized the scale of the operation and the difficulties crews faced in the Appalachian terrain. Investigators continued to examine structures within the search area, including sheds, barns, and outbuildings. Some of these locations were difficult to access due to brush or uneven ground, but each was checked thoroughly. These searches were part of the effort to eliminate every possible hiding place. The TBI maintained clear communication with the public, releasing verified information while avoiding speculation. Officials stressed that the investigation was complex and that multiple scenarios remained under evaluation. Their transparency helped manage public expectations during a period of heightened visibility. As days passed, it became clear that the operation was among the most labor-intensive in the county's history. The volume of land examined, the number of agencies involved, and the level of coordination required made the search a significant undertaking. Even so, the determination of the crews did not waver. Investigators also evaluated historical maps and satellite imagery of the region to understand how the landscape may have changed over time. This helped identify older paths, unused access points, and out-of-view clearings. These insights informed search patterns and allowed for deeper analysis of the surrounding area. In addition to physical searches, investigators began reviewing potential digital information. While details were limited, these reviews were standard practice in cases where timelines and movements need verification. Any relevant data would help strengthen the overall understanding of the hours surrounding the disappearance. Despite extensive efforts, no confirmed evidence surfaced during this phase of the search. While discouraging, such outcomes are not uncommon in challenging environments. Investigators emphasized that the absence of findings did not indicate a lack of progress but reflected the difficulties of operating in a region with such rugged terrain. As the initial search period came to a close, authorities prepared to transition from broad ground operations to long-term investigation. Although much of the land had been covered, questions remained unanswered. The next phase would involve deeper review, follow-up on early reports, and continued evaluation of any credible leads that emerged. In the days following the initial search, investigators began receiving information from residents and individuals who were in the area on June 15, 2021. These early leads played a crucial role in shaping the direction of the investigation, even though none ultimately led to confirmed findings. Each detail was documented and evaluated, contributing to the broader understanding of the day Summer disappeared. One of the earliest reports involved a red or maroon Toyota pickup truck that was reportedly seen in the area around the time Summer went missing. Investigators emphasized that the vehicle's presence had not been confirmed, and they encouraged the owner to come forward so they could determine whether the sighting had any relevance to the case. Despite the public interest surrounding the truck, the TBI clarified that they did not know if the sighting was related to the disappearance. The uncertainty surrounding this lead demonstrated the complexity investigators faced when evaluating unconfirmed reports. Even so, the detail remained part of the case's early timeline. Another early report came from a nearby resident who said she heard what she believed was a scream roughly an hour before Summer was discovered missing. This account drew widespread attention and raised questions about its potential significance. Investigators looked into the report but later stated that it did not bring them closer to answers. Because the terrain surrounding the Wells property was so difficult, investigators considered the possibility that Summer might have wandered into one of the heavily wooded areas nearby. This scenario prompted teams to re-examine certain locations even after they had been searched previously. Environmental factors such as thick brush and steep slopes complicated these efforts. Search dogs were brought in repeatedly to review key areas. While dogs can be extremely useful in missing person investigations, their results are influenced by weather conditions, ground temperature, and terrain. For that reason, investigators often use them in overlapping patterns to confirm any potential indications. Another area of focus was the Wells property itself, including outbuildings, vehicles, and paths leading away from the home. Investigators returned to the property multiple times for follow-up examinations. These revisits are standard practice to ensure that no detail is overlooked during the early stages of an investigation. Tips also came in from nearby counties, with some individuals reporting potential sightings that resembled Summer's age and appearance. Investigators followed up on these submissions, reviewing each for credibility. None of the reported sightings were verified, but they helped establish a pattern of public awareness. Digital leads also formed part of the early review. Investigators assessed whether any online postings, communications, or digital patterns contained relevant information. These reviews required time and specialized tools, but they were necessary to confirm whether technology played any role in the events of that day. Meanwhile, investigators continued to examine data related to vehicles in the area. They reviewed traffic camera footage where available, though rural roads often lack surveillance infrastructure. The absence of cameras in key locations limited what could be confirmed about vehicle movement on the day of the disappearance. Some early leads involved buildings or properties located farther from Ben Hill Road. Investigators checked these locations when necessary, examining abandoned homes, remote sheds, and old structures. While these searches did not produce evidence, they showed the lengths investigators were willing to go in their pursuit of answers. Interviews with residents remained ongoing throughout the early weeks. Investigators spoke with those who lived nearby, individuals who passed through the area, and anyone who reported activity of interest. These interviews helped establish a timeline, even though they did not lead to major breakthroughs. Weather conditions also played a significant role in shaping the early investigation. Sudden changes in temperature and rainfall can affect terrain, scent tracking, and visibility. Investigators noted that these factors may have contributed to the challenges faced during the initial search. Another important early detail involved the lack of confirmed physical evidence. No clothing, personal items, or footprints linked to Summer were discovered in the search areas. While discouraging, This lack of physical clues helped investigators rule out some possibilities while continuing to evaluate others. The TBI continued to stress that all possibilities remained open. Without clear evidence supporting one scenario over another, investigators refused to narrow their focus. This balanced approach allowed them to examine leads methodically rather than prematurely committing to a single explanation. As public interest grew, investigators urged caution regarding speculation. Early leads often generate theories, but the TBI emphasized that only verified information should guide understanding of the case. This messaging helped maintain clarity during a period when the case received intense attention. Reporters covering the case highlighted how difficult it was for investigators to determine the meaning of early leads. With no confirmed connections between reported sightings, sounds, or vehicles, the investigation relied heavily on ruling out possibilities rather than confirming them. Despite the uncertainty surrounding early reports, the leads played an important role in shaping the long-term timeline. They guided investigative paths, informed the search radius, and contributed to decisions about which areas needed re-examination. Each lead helped refine the broader understanding of the case. By the end of the early phase, investigators had evaluated dozens of tips, conducted multiple interviews, and completed extensive searches. Although none of these leads resulted in confirmed findings, they helped establish the groundwork for the long-term investigation that would continue for years. The early leads demonstrated how complex missing person cases can become when physical evidence is limited. While none of the reports brought investigators closer to a definitive answer, each contributed a piece to the overall picture. These initial steps set the stage for the next phase of the investigation, including the long-term review that followed. As weeks passed without confirmed findings, the investigation naturally shifted from an urgent search effort into a long-term case. This transition is common in missing child investigations when early leads do not produce clear answers. For the TBI, this meant reorganizing resources, reassessing existing evidence, and preparing for a long process focused on analysis rather than rapid search operations. Investigators began reviewing the earliest information again, checking statements, timelines, and environmental conditions. Re-examining the foundation of a case is standard procedure when searches do not produce clarity. By ensuring all early details were verified and properly documented, the investigative team strengthened their long-term strategy. The Wells family home and surrounding property were revisited multiple times during this phase. Investigators conducted follow-up searches and reviewed areas that had already been examined. Conditions such as weather, lighting, and seasonal changes can alter visibility, making repeat searches important even when they cover familiar ground. Officials maintained communication with the public to address concerns and provide updates. While details were limited, the TBI emphasized that the case remained active and that no possibility had been ruled out. This messaging helped guide public expectations as the investigation transitioned into a more methodical stage. Digital records, communication logs, and location data were reviewed again to ensure that every piece of information had been evaluated. This type of analysis often becomes more important in long-term investigations, as digital footprints can help clarify timelines or confirm movements around the time of the disappearance. Age progression planning began early in the long-term phase. As time passed, it became important to update how Summer might look as she grew older. These projections would eventually become essential tools in maintaining public awareness and assisting in any potential future recognition. Investigators also coordinated with national databases to ensure that information about the case was available across multiple jurisdictions. This step helped broaden the scope of public awareness, as cases with limited local evidence sometimes require national visibility to generate new leads. The TBI continued to receive tips during this period. While many were general observations or statements, each one required review and documentation. Long-term investigations often rely on steady evaluation of new submissions, even when earlier leads have not produced clear results. Seasonal conditions presented additional challenges. As months changed, the terrain around the Wells property shifted, affecting vegetation density and visibility. Investigators revisited select areas to determine whether conditions might reveal anything that had not been visible during the initial search. Interviews were also revisited. Investigators sometimes re-interview individuals to clarify statements or confirm earlier accounts. This repetition helps ensure that timelines and observations remain consistent as new information is compared with past reports. Media attention remained strong during this phase, prompting the TBI to address speculation directly. They reminded the public that only verified information would be released and that the purpose of their communication was to preserve the accuracy of the ongoing investigation. This guidance helped counter the spread of unconfirmed theories online. The case continued to receive frequent coverage across regional news outlets. Each update summarized what had been confirmed so far, explained the challenges investigators faced, and emphasized that the case remained open. This steady visibility helped ensure that awareness did not fade as time passed. Community support also continued. Residents posted signs, distributed flyers, and organized awareness events. Their involvement demonstrated the emotional impact the disappearance had on the region and reinforced the importance of public engagement in long-term cases. The TBI focused heavily on eliminating as many potential scenarios as possible. Without confirmed evidence pointing clearly in one direction, the investigation required careful review of multiple possibilities. This methodical elimination process is often what defines missing child cases that extend over multiple years. Investigators also examined the timeline of search operations to identify areas that may have been affected by environmental conditions. For example, heavy rainfall or dense growth can obscure visibility. Revisiting these areas during different seasons helped ensure that the search remained comprehensive. As time passed, the work of analysts became increasingly important. Mapping, data organization, and timeline reconstruction all contributed to the long-term understanding of the case. These analytical tools helped guide investigative decisions, shaping which areas required further review. During this stage, the TBI continued to stress that they lacked conclusive evidence to determine what happened. They stated this publicly multiple times to emphasize that the investigation remained open to all possibilities. This stance helped maintain objectivity and prevented premature conclusions. Public interest occasionally surged during anniversaries of the disappearance. News outlets revisited the case each year, summarizing what had been confirmed and highlighting any new developments. These moments of renewed attention helped generate additional tips and reminded viewers that the investigation was still active. Although progress remained limited, the continuity of the investigation demonstrated the commitment of law enforcement agencies. Long-term cases often depend on persistence, and the TBI's ongoing work ensured that the case never went dormant. Every reviewed lead, no matter how small, contributed to the case's evolving foundation. The transition into a long-term investigation marked the beginning of a new phase, one defined by patience, analysis, and steady pursuit of verified information. While the initial search did not yield answers, the groundwork laid during this time set the stage for future developments, including the renewed activity that would surface years later. As the investigation continued into the months and years following Summer Wells' disappearance, her family became a central focus of media attention. While investigators emphasized that the case required patience and verified information, many people looked to the family for insight, emotional perspective, and updates. This visibility shaped how the public followed the early stages of the case. During the first months, Summer's parents, Dawn Wells and Candace Bly, participated in several interviews with local and national media outlets. They shared details about the day their daughter disappeared and expressed their belief that she was no longer near the property. Their interviews became widely circulated and often replayed in news coverage. The family explained their understanding of what happened based on their personal observations. Don Wells stated in some interviews that he believed Summer might have been taken away from the property, though investigators did not confirm this scenario. These statements became a recurring topic in media discussions surrounding the case. In other interviews, Candace Bly described the moment she realized Summer was no longer inside the house. She recalled calling for her daughter several times before going downstairs to check, only to discover that Summer was nowhere to be found. These personal accounts added emotional depth to the early coverage and helped the public understand the family's perspective. As media attention intensified, the family experienced both support and criticism. High-profile cases often attract significant online discussion, and the volume of commentary surrounding Summer's disappearance increased rapidly. Over time, this attention began shifting from information to reaction, creating emotional strain for the family. During this period, investigators reminded the public that the family had not been identified as suspects. Officials stated that all individuals were considered persons of interest in the sense that everyone with potential information was part of the broader review. This clarification aimed to maintain balance and protect the integrity of the investigation. In 2021, the family also appeared on national television, where they discussed their emotional experience and addressed questions raised by the public. These appearances, while intended to share their perspective, also increased scrutiny and contributed to additional online discussions. As months turned into years, the intensity of public attention created challenges for the family. Don Wells spoke about feeling overwhelmed by the volume of criticism and misinformation circulating online. He described moments when ordinary activities, such as shopping, became difficult due to reactions from the public. The emotional weight of the situation was compounded when the Tennessee Department of Children's Services removed the Wells' other children from the home. While details were not publicly disclosed, Don Wells later stated that this development had deeply affected the family and contributed to their decision to speak less frequently with the media. During interviews with regional outlets, Don Wells expressed frustration with aspects of the investigation, describing how the lack of answers created ongoing uncertainty. Even so, the family continued to say that they trusted investigators and hoped for a resolution. Their message emphasized both emotional impact and reliance on official updates. By 2023 and 2024, the family began noticeably reducing their media presence. Public statements from the Wells family grew less frequent as they sought privacy and attempted to manage the emotional challenges that accompany long-term cases. They continued to thank investigators and supporters but stepped back from public conversation. This reduction in interviews marked a shift from their earlier communication style. Instead of extended media appearances, the family began using short written statements to acknowledge updates or anniversaries. These statements typically focused on appreciation for ongoing investigative work and the hope that answers would eventually surface. Meanwhile, public opinion remained divided. Some followers of the case believed the family should speak more, while others argued that privacy was essential for their emotional well-being. Investigators reminded the public that personal opinions were not substitutes for confirmed information and encouraged viewers to rely on official statements. During yearly anniversaries, reporters often contacted the family for comment. In some cases, the family responded briefly; in others, they declined. These moments highlighted the difficulty of balancing public interest with personal emotional boundaries, especially as the case remained unresolved. In 2024, when the TBI released updated age progression images, the family shared gratitude for the continued efforts of investigators. They also urged people to focus on verified information and avoid speculation. Their message reflected the desire to keep the case grounded in facts rather than assumptions. Online discussions occasionally led to misunderstandings about the family's role in the case. The TBI addressed these concerns by reiterating that the investigation remained open and that no definitive conclusions had been reached about any scenario. This reminder helped refocus the public on the importance of accuracy. Over time, the family expressed increasing concern about the emotional toll that public scrutiny had taken. Don Wells stated in interviews that the situation had become overwhelming, leading him to leave the state temporarily to find work and reduce the pressure of public attention. As 2025 approached, the family maintained a quieter presence. Their decision to step back from interviews reflected both emotional fatigue and the desire to avoid contributing to confusion surrounding the case. They emphasized that only official investigative updates should guide the public's understanding. This shift became especially clear after the TBI confirmed the 2025 Van Hill Road lead. When reporters requested comments, the family released a short statement explaining that they would not be giving interviews and preferred to wait for confirmed information from investigators. This message signaled a firm boundary in how they wished to communicate moving forward. The evolution of the family's public role from early interviews to limited statements reflected the challenges faced in long-term missing child cases. Their decision to prioritize privacy shaped how the public received later developments. This transition set the stage for the next major chapter, renewed investigative activity years after the disappearance. From the earliest days of the investigation, Several details and reports shaped the direction of the search for Summer Wells. While many of these leads were discussed widely in news coverage, investigators emphasized that each one required careful evaluation before conclusions could be drawn. This section revisits the major leads that defined the early stages of the case. One of the most publicly recognized leads involved a report of a red or maroon Toyota pickup truck seen in the area around the time Summer disappeared. Investigators made repeated requests for the driver to come forward. They clarified that the driver was not considered a suspect but could have information that would help clarify the timeline. Despite widespread interest in the truck, officials later confirmed that they had no evidence connecting it directly to the disappearance. The uncertainty surrounding the sighting showed how early leads can generate attention without providing concrete direction. Still, investigators continued to welcome information about the vehicle. Another widely discussed early detail came from a nearby resident who reported hearing what she believed was a scream on the day Summer was reported missing. Investigators reviewed the account but later stated that the tip did not bring them closer to answers. Even so, the detail became part of the public's long-term understanding of the case. Several leads focused on the possibility that Summer might have wandered into the surrounding terrain. The steep, wooded environment around the Wells residence created natural obstacles and made thorough searches difficult. These conditions required multiple reviews of certain areas, especially where visibility was limited. Teams using trained dogs returned to the area multiple times to examine paths, slopes, and wooded pockets. Scent-based tools can be useful, but results depend on environmental factors such as temperature, wind, and ground conditions. Investigators used repeated passes to ensure that potential indicators were not overlooked. Buildings and structures on and near the property were also revisited throughout the early investigation. Sheds, barns, vehicles, and closets were inspected multiple times. These follow-ups were standard practice to ensure that no detail within the immediate area was missed during initial sweeps. Search teams also focused on streams, ridges, and clearings in the surrounding area. This included examining areas that required technical equipment due to steep drop-offs or dense vegetation. Despite these efforts, no confirmed trace of Summer was located during these operations. Leads came in from across Tennessee, with some individuals reporting possible sightings or sharing information they believed might be relevant. Investigators reviewed these submissions thoroughly. While none resulted in verified breakthroughs, they helped keep the case active and demonstrated broad public engagement. Digital leads were also part of the review. Investigators examined communications, online activity, and electronic records that could help clarify movement or timing. These processes are standard in modern investigations and help ensure that no potential source of information is overlooked. Some tips involved the presence of unfamiliar individuals or vehicles in the broader county area. These reports were checked when possible. Investigators made it clear that following up on general observations is part of the process, even when the likelihood of a connection is low. Certain remote properties and abandoned structures were searched due to public submissions. Investigators cleared these locations after determining that none contained evidence linked to the case. These steps demonstrated the thoroughness of their approach, even when reviewing low-probability areas. As months passed, investigators conducted follow-up interviews when new information overlapped with previously documented statements. These interviews helped clarify timeframes and address minor inconsistencies. This repetitive process is common in long-term investigations and helps maintain accurate records. The TBI released multiple updates during this period to keep the public informed. They consistently reminded viewers that no scenario had been confirmed. Officials encouraged people to avoid speculation and focus on verified details released directly through official channels. News outlets often revisited the major leads in their coverage, summarizing what had been evaluated. These stories helped the public understand why certain early details did not result in confirmed findings. They also emphasized how the lack of physical evidence created ongoing challenges for investigators. The terrain in Hawkins County continued to influence the interpretation of leads. Dense vegetation, steep slopes, and limited visibility made it difficult to determine whether early reports were connected to the disappearance. These environmental factors consistently shaped how investigators approached new tips. Even though many early leads did not yield results, investigators stressed that they remained important pieces of the overall timeline. Each one contributed to the broader understanding of the case by helping eliminate certain possibilities and highlight areas that required deeper review. Public interest in these leads sometimes increased during anniversaries and press updates. When media coverage surged, investigators often received new submissions from individuals who believed they had seen something relevant in the past. These late-stage tips were reviewed with the same diligence as early ones. By the time the investigation entered its third and fourth years, many of the initial leads had been thoroughly evaluated. Although none resulted in confirmed breakthroughs, they formed the backbone of the case's early structure. Their review helped shape long-term strategies and guided the direction of later investigative efforts. The early leads, though inconclusive, provided essential groundwork for what came next. Their evaluation demonstrated the methodical approach investigators used throughout the case. This foundation became especially important when new developments surfaced years later, including the renewed activity in 2025 near Van Hill Road. In November 2025, renewed attention returned to the Summer Wells investigation when the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation confirmed a follow-up search at a location nearly 10 miles from the Wells family home. For the first time in many months, investigators publicly acknowledged activity connected to a specific area, drawing widespread interest throughout Tennessee. According to regional news outlets, TBI agents and detectives were present in the 2500 to 3500 block of Van Hill Road in Greenville on November 13th. This rural area, known for winding roads and wooded terrain, became the focus of a new lead that investigators determined necessary to evaluate in person. While TBI officials confirmed their presence at the location, they released no details about the nature of the lead. This careful approach aligned with the agency's long-standing policy of protecting the integrity of active investigations. Officials stressed that only verified information would be shared with the public. The location itself received attention due to its proximity to Ben Hill Road, the area where Summer was reported missing in 2021. Although the distance was relatively short, investigators did not suggest any direct correlation between the two locations. Their comments remained neutral and focused solely on the confirmed action taken. Throughout the day, investigators remained at the site conducting unspecified work. Local reporters noted the presence of multiple vehicles and personnel, but no additional information was disclosed. Law enforcement agencies frequently perform on-site evaluations in long-term cases when new tips meet certain criteria. The TBI did not confirm whether any items were collected. They emphasized that follow-up visits do not always produce visible or immediate results. In many cases, the purpose is to gather information, document observations, or determine whether additional steps are necessary. This 2025 lead became one of the most significant updates in years due to the rarity of confirmed investigative activity. Many earlier reviews were conducted privately, with limited public acknowledgement. The transparency surrounding this visit signaled that the lead was important enough to be openly addressed. Community members in Greenville reported seeing investigators in the area but respected the boundaries of the ongoing work. Local officials urged residents not to interfere with the scene and reminded them that long-term cases often require quiet, uninterrupted efforts to ensure accuracy. The terrain along Van Hill Road resembles much of the broader East Tennessee landscape, featuring wooded areas, hills, and stretches of rural property. This type of environment can be difficult to search thoroughly, contributing to the complexity of evaluating new information that arises years after an initial disappearance. News outlets covering the update emphasized that investigators had not linked the location to any earlier leads. The TBI reiterated that without confirmed evidence, they could not comment on the significance of the site. This consistent messaging helped avoid speculation and maintain focus on verified details. Shortly after the activity became public, the Wells family released a brief written statement through social media. They explained that they would not be participating in interviews or providing additional comments. Their message conveyed a desire to avoid emotional strain and to wait for updates from investigators. The family also expressed appreciation for the agencies involved in the investigation. They explained that discussions without verified information often led to unnecessary tension. Their decision to remain silent reflected their emphasis on relying solely on official updates during a period of renewed public interest. The TBI's follow-up at Van Hill Road demonstrated how long-term investigations can evolve unexpectedly. Leads may surface months or years after an incident, sometimes triggered by new information, public reflection, or previously overlooked observations. Investigators remain prepared to revisit locations whenever credible information emerges. Public reaction to the Van Hill Road activity was immediate. Many hoped the update represented progress, while others approached it with caution, understanding that long-term cases often involve leads that do not produce concrete outcomes. The mixed reactions reflected the emotional weight carried by those who have followed the case for years. Media coverage remained factual, summarizing what investigators confirmed while reminding viewers that details were limited. This approach helped maintain accurate understanding and prevented the spread of unverified interpretations that could complicate the investigation. The significance of the 2025 lead became clearer when compared to previous years of limited updates. While investigators consistently worked behind the scenes, public confirmations of field activity were rare. The Van Hill Road search showed that the case still generated actionable information and remained an active priority. Investigators emphasized that the Summer Wells case had never gone dormant. Even when updates were infrequent, teams continued reviewing tips, re-evaluating data, and examining geographic information. The Van Hill Road follow-up was simply the latest example of this ongoing effort. Local sheriff's department officials echoed the TBI's statements, reminding the community that any credible lead would be followed regardless of how much time had passed. Their comments highlighted the importance of public awareness and cooperation in long-term missing child investigations. Although no additional findings were disclosed, the Van Hill Road development added a new chapter to the timeline. It reinforced the idea that the investigation remains open and subject to new directions. Each lead, including this one, contributes to the broader effort to understand what happened. The renewed activity in 2025 demonstrated that even after 4 years, the search for answers continues. The Van Hill Road lead, though still without publicly confirmed results, remains a significant moment in the ongoing investigation. It serves as a reminder that long-term cases can shift at any time as new information emerges. As the investigation progresses into its 5th year, the disappearance of Summer Wells remains one of Tennessee's most widely followed missing child cases. Despite extensive search efforts, multiple reviews, and national attention, the central questions surrounding the case remain unanswered. The investigation continues, driven by patience, caution, and a commitment to verified information. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has consistently stated that the case remains open and active. Their updates emphasize that no scenario has been confirmed, and no explanation has been ruled out. The ongoing status of the Amber Alert reflects the seriousness with which investigators continue to treat the case. One of the defining challenges of the investigation is the lack of confirmed physical evidence. No items belonging to Summer, no verified sightings, and no confirmed traces were found in the extensive search operations. This absence has made it difficult for investigators to narrow the scope of possible explanations. Despite these difficulties, investigators remain committed to reviewing every credible lead. Each tip submitted by the public, regardless of where it comes from, must be documented and evaluated. This steady flow of information keeps the case active, even during periods without public updates. Age progression images play a significant role in maintaining public awareness. Over time, the TBI has released updated projections showing how Summer might look as she grows older. These images help ensure that the public can recognize her potential appearance, keeping the case visible across state lines. Community involvement remains one of the most persistent aspects of the case. Signs, banners, and posters continue to appear in Hawkins County and beyond. These displays remind people that the case has not been resolved and that the search for information remains ongoing. At the same time, investigators have repeatedly urged the public to rely on verified updates. Because the case has attracted significant attention, unconfirmed theories have circulated widely online. Officials stress that speculation can complicate the investigation by diverting attention from actionable information. Over the years, reporters have noted that the investigation has become an example of how long-term cases require steady, methodical work. Rather than relying on dramatic breakthroughs, investigators often depend on patience, data review, and persistence. This approach continues to guide the case today. Search teams also remain prepared to return to the field whenever necessary. Even years after the disappearance, investigators have revisited locations based on seasonal changes, newly available information, and tip-based leads. The 2025 visit to Van Hill Road is the most recent example of this readiness. The Wells family has adopted a more private stance in recent years. After facing extensive public attention and online criticism, they chose to limit interviews and refrain from participating in frequent media coverage. Instead, they rely on short written statements to acknowledge major developments. Their most recent statement, issued after the 2025 Van Hill Road follow-up, emphasized their desire to avoid unnecessary emotional stress. They expressed appreciation for investigators and asked supporters to wait for verified information. This message aligned with the TBI's ongoing emphasis on accuracy. The community response to the case remains strong. Many individuals continue to watch for updates, share official posts, and support awareness campaigns. This sustained engagement helps ensure that the case does not fade from public attention, even as time progresses. National media outlets periodically revisit the case during anniversaries or key developments. These reports help amplify the TBI's messages and summarize what is known. They also highlight the challenges investigators face when cases extend over several years without clear answers. One of the most important questions that remains is what happened on the day Summer disappeared. Investigators have repeatedly stated that they do not have evidence to determine whether she left the property on her own or whether another scenario occurred. This lack of clarity continues to drive the investigation. Another unknown is whether earlier reports such as the vehicle sighting or the sound reported by a neighbor have any connection to the case. Without evidence linking these details to the disappearance, investigators cannot confirm their relevance, even though they remain part of the public's memory of the case. As long-term cases continue, investigators often rely on technological advancements. Updated tools for analyzing digital data, satellite imagery, and geographic patterns may provide new insights. Over time, these resources can help identify leads that were not accessible with earlier technology. Investigators also work to ensure that information about Summer remains active in national missing person databases. This broad visibility ensures that if any information or potential sightings rise beyond Tennessee, authorities in other states will be able to match them quickly and accurately. Despite the long timeline, the TBI has emphasized that the case is far from dormant. The confirmed follow-up at Van Hill Road in 2025 shows that investigators still receive and evaluate new information. Leads can emerge unexpectedly, and each one has the potential to contribute to the overall understanding. For many who follow the case, the biggest challenge is accepting the uncertainty that surrounds it. Without confirmed answers, the timeline remains open-ended. This absence of resolution is difficult for both the community and investigators, but it also reinforces the need for steady, verified updates. As of the latest reports, the disappearance of Summer Wells remains an active investigation built on persistence, careful analysis, and attention to every credible detail. What remains unknown continues to guide the work of investigators. The 2025 developments at Van Hill Road serve as a reminder that long-term cases can shift direction at any time and that every verified lead matters. From the first hours after Summer Wells was reported missing, media outlets played a major role in spreading information about the case. Local stations provided immediate updates, while national networks soon joined, increasing awareness across the country. This visibility helped amplify alerts and ensured that details reached as wide an audience as possible. Early press conferences became key moments in shaping public understanding. Investigators used these events to share verified information, outline search efforts, and manage expectations. Their consistent reminders about relying on official updates helped reduce confusion during a period of extremely high public interest. As days turned into weeks, coverage expanded beyond breaking news updates. Reporters produced detailed summaries, interviews, and timelines. These stories helped people outside Tennessee understand the complexity of the search, including the difficult terrain and the extensive resources involved. Social media platforms rapidly amplified the case. Posts, discussions, and shared articles reached millions of people within days. While this attention increased public awareness, it also created challenges. Investigators emphasized that online speculation could complicate the search for accurate information. Online communities formed dedicated groups focused on discussing the case. Many members shared official updates, analysis, and support for the family. Others attempted to examine publicly available details. The TBI repeatedly encouraged these communities to avoid speculation and prioritize verified facts. The intense public interest sometimes led to misunderstandings or the spread of inaccurate assumptions. Investigators intervened several times to correct misinformation circulating online. These corrections highlighted the importance of transparency and factual consistency in long-term cases. Documentary creators, podcasters, and independent researchers also contributed to the case's visibility. Their content varied from news-style reporting to broader discussions about missing person investigations. While these formats kept the case in public awareness, investigators encouraged audiences to seek confirmation from official sources. Billboards, flyers, and awareness banners remained visible throughout Hawkins County and surrounding regions. These physical reminders played an important role in keeping the case active within the community. They encouraged people to report information and helped maintain a sense of shared responsibility. Local residents continued to participate in awareness events, such as prayer gatherings, candlelight vigils, and community meetings. These events were not organized by investigators but reflected the emotional impact the case had on the region. They demonstrated how deeply the community cared about finding answers. Each year on the anniversary of Summer's disappearance, news outlets revisited the case with updated reports. These retrospectives summarized what had been confirmed and highlighted the challenges investigators continued to face. They also reminded viewers that the investigation remained active. National coverage increased whenever new developments surfaced. The release of age progression photos in 2023 and 2024 generated widespread media attention. These images were shared across platforms, helping maintain the possibility that someone outside Tennessee might recognize Summer. The high-profile nature of the case created unique challenges for the family. Public attention magnified every detail and often placed emotional pressure on them. This contributed to their later decision to limit interviews and rely on short written statements, especially during major updates. Law enforcement agencies often must balance transparency with investigative integrity. In the Summer Wells case, investigators shared information selectively to prevent interference with the ongoing review. Their updates focused on confirmed actions, such as the 2025 Van Hill Road follow-up, without revealing sensitive operational details. The long-term public attention surrounding the case resulted in frequent revisits to earlier details. News outlets and online commentators often re-examined past statements, interviews, and leads. While this preserved awareness, investigators reminded viewers that conclusions must rely on verified evidence rather than reinterpretations. Public engagement also resulted in new tips being submitted over the years. Some people reported details they had overlooked initially, while others shared information after encountering the case online. Investigators reviewed each submission, reinforcing the idea that public awareness can contribute positively to long-term cases. The case also influenced discussions about missing child alerts, search procedures, and community response. Investigators noted that large-scale searches in rugged terrain require extensive resources and coordination. The lessons learned from early operations contributed to procedural improvements in later cases across the region. The emotional impact of the case extended far beyond Hawkins County. Viewers across the country expressed empathy for the Wells family and the broader community. This widespread concern helped sustain national interest, contributing to the longevity of media coverage. As the case gained long-term visibility, journalists and analysts noted that not all missing person cases receive similar attention. They highlighted how factors such as location, timing, and media engagement can shape the amount of coverage a case receives. Summer's case became part of broader conversations about awareness and advocacy. The enduring interest in the investigation also demonstrated how deeply a community can be affected by an unresolved disappearance. For many residents, the lack of answers remains difficult. Their continued support reflects a shared commitment to keeping the case in public consciousness until clarity is achieved. Today, the Summer Wells case stands as an example of how media, community involvement, and long-term investigative work intersect. The ongoing attention ensures that the case remains active, while the steady release of verified updates helps guide public understanding. This balance continues to shape the case as investigators work toward answers. As we reach the end of this breakdown, one message remains clear. The disappearance of Summer Wells continues to be an active investigation shaped by patience, verified facts, and the unwavering work of multiple agencies. Even after years of searching and reviewing countless leads, investigators have not closed the case. Every confirmed update, whether a field search, a new image, or a re-evaluated tip, adds another piece to a timeline still without final answers. The recent activity near Van Hill Road is a reminder that long-term cases can shift unexpectedly. Leads may surface quietly, years after an incident, and still be important enough for investigators to evaluate in person. While the public often hopes for immediate clarity, true progress in complex cases comes from consistent, methodical work. That is the foundation the TBI continues to rely on as they follow every credible direction. For the community, and for those who have followed this case closely, staying grounded in verified information remains essential. Investigators have repeatedly emphasized the importance of avoiding speculation and focusing only on confirmed details shared through official channels. This approach not only supports the ongoing investigation, but also respects everyone affected by the case, including the Wells family and the wider community. If you want more factual updates, structured timelines, and responsible coverage of long-term investigations, be sure to subscribe to Crime Wisp, turn on notifications so you never miss a verified development, and share this video to support accurate reporting. And remember, if you have credible information related to the disappearance of Summer Wells, contact the TBI at 1-800-TBI-FIND. Thank you for watching and for staying committed to truth-based coverage.